the detentions and deportations, to get ICE out of our communities, out of our workplaces, out of these hospitals, out of the churches, out of our schools, get ICE out of Dublin where they're trying to open a new ICE facility. They're trying to open facilities on military bases, and we're going to continue to push for more sanctuary and more protection for our communities as Trump tries to deploy National Guard and military forces. So we can go to these slides here and see what that fight's starting to look like as we start to bring them together. That was the Defend Migrants conference that we had that Kai talked about. We said we need to come together and bring these fights together. So we called for a United Migrants Alliance. With these points of unity, I won't read through all of them, but the second one in particular, we want to also hold our home country governments accountable, including both the U.S. government and our home country governments, to fulfill their responsibilities in ensuring the rights and welfare of our people. If you go to the next slide, points 3 and 4, expose and oppose the for-profit system of corporations benefiting from inhumane migrant detention, and grow our movement as we go forward in the fights. If we go to the next slide, you can see this is where you can join the alliance, the Defend Migrants Alliance. Like I said, there's over 100 organizations that are part of it. They can go to the website there or scan that. We'll go back to this in a minute. But we'll just show a video and some photos that come from the powerful gathering that we had there at Alliance at the conference and mobilization. So if we go
Sisters and brothers in struggle, why does the U.S. government relentlessly attack migrants, refugees, and people of color if their economy has been dependent on our children?
This is what fascism is. It's an all-sided attack against workers, and it's a tool used to maintain capitalism and keep the rich rich, while the people are poor. Their lives are not bureaucratic people. Our suffering is not a line item in the budget. Our families cannot wait for empty promises.
Las calles a luchar porque todos somos humanos y necesitamos una libertad digna.
But our mantra has become rigorously selective. And that victory doesn't mean we won't have losses. But you mourn for the dead, and you fight again for the living.
所以如果PPT他想把我们弄走，我们至少能够说明我们自己的能力跟强化，我们要团结起来。
It's hard in my statement and testimonies, I don't change. That's changed. I demand change.
So many people that are saying, es un ser humano con sueños. Each one of them is a human being with dreams.
That conference resulted in the proud launch of the Defend Migrants Alliance with over 100 member organizations.
This is where folks can join the Defend Migrants Alliance. We're going to continue to build it. We're here with ICHRP today. We're here with so many community groups and organizations. We can build the power that we need through the Defend Migrants Alliance and others. We're going to take action too. We vowed at that conference to hold our country governments accountable. This is coming this week to New York at the UN. Bukele from El Salvador. Lee from Korea, And I think Marcos Jr. was afraid of our power, so he's sending his foreign affairs secretary. Then Yahoo's coming from Israel. So as the Defend Migrants Alliance, we want to do a week of action at the UN to oppose these heads of state coming to our country. So, to be first to the summit, Migrant USA has a Barcelona commemoration. Nodo protesting South Korean President Lee, whooping commemorating the Puerto Rican struggle for independence. Within our lifetime, PYM will have actions against the genocide criminal Netanyahu. And CSPS has an action against Bukele and Freelance against Tanggol of Ecuador. So a week of action already, we're taking action, we're going to continue to build this power and the alliance. So join us, faith, labor, and all of our communities together.
Let's give it up for Terry. Terry Tanggol and the Defend Migrants Alliance. All right, so just as we start the transition to our next speaker, just want to remind folks that if you want to send in questions, there's the QR code that is, it's in different parts of the building. So if you want to be able to send in a question, please do so. And also, because we have so many great panelists and many great speakers, I know that we probably can't ask all the questions we want. We have the workshops after this, so folks can, of course, feel free to continue the discussions, ask more questions then. So with that, we'll move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Reverend Jeanelle Abdullah. Jeanelle is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church, lead pastor at Pine UMC San Francisco, not too far from here, and co-chair of the California-Nevada Philippine Solidarity Task Force. The PSCF leads annual pastoral and solidarity missions to the Philippines in partnership with the National Council of Churches in the Philippines, or NCCP. Grounded in the ministry of presence and international solidarity, the PSCF immerses with communities advocating for people's rights in the Philippines and in the Bay Area, and organizes people of faith to join a movement for a just and lasting peace in the Philippines. Everyone give it up for Pastor Jeanelle.
So Philippine Solidarity Task Force, also a member of ICHRP and CWWM, or Churches Witnessing with Migrants, which Terry had named earlier. We were actually there when ICHRP launched in 2013, so I've been doing this work for a minute. I am here speaking to remind y'all to not sleep on churches and bringing them into our work. Christians and those of the Abrahamic faiths have within their texts, their sacred texts and stories, the mandate to welcome the stranger. From the Hebrew texts of the so-called Old Testament to Gospels that talk about the ministry of Jesus to Paul's writing, right? All throughout the sacred texts of Christians, there is the mandate to welcome the stranger and present hospitality to the stranger. Even that text on Sodom and Gomorrah that some of us LGBTQ folks know because that's often being used against us, that text, guess what? It's about welcoming the stranger. The violence that was involved in that story was because that community was enacting violence upon foreigners and migrants who would come there to seek refuge. That's what that story is actually about. So why throughout the sacred text do we find this continuous mandate to welcome the stranger, to extend hospitality to the stranger? The context of that time was the context of displacement, the context of exile due to struggles over resources and land. Does that sound familiar to folks here? And also persecution by Roman empires, occupation, and those who uphold the Roman Empire at that time. Empire at that time was in a place where it was imposed upon people that Caesar, or the emperor, was God. Does that sound familiar today? So the need for hospitality is not just there as this nice thing, it actually has a political context to it, right? It talks about stories of power, stories of people conquering over, and then it centers this story of an oppressed community trying to find their relationship with God and the relationship with each other in the context of all of this oppression happening. So the need for hospitality is a practice for survival, and also a survival practice meant to counter the ways of empire. It was to provide safety for those targeted by empire. It was to provide safety for those who bear the brunt of empire's exploitation. That is why we have that in our Christian texts. In Hebrews, the letter of Hebrews, sometimes they say that Paul has written Hebrews, but in Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1 through 3, we are encouraged as people of faith to extend hospitality, to entertain migrants, because who knows, we might be entertaining angels. And now, so angels, we have all these images of what an angel is, but in the context of the text, angels are messengers. They are liaisons where the truth of humanity comes together with the truth of the divine, the prophetic truth. So migrants themselves can tell the honest truth about the conditions of humanity and also the conditions of our sacred practice of what we should be doing as people of faith. And thanks to some of our friends in the Pacific Northwest who are also sharing with me what churches can do in order to take action, because our faith tells us we should take action. At a very basic level, we can provide venue. So churches have historically been considered secure and trusted venues for legal clinics and for immigrants to come and find refuge, and also to find livelihood and jobs, right? Those networks in order for folks to get their feet on the ground here in the US. So oftentimes they're trusted spaces. Church venues can be used to host Know Your Rights trainings, and also broadly, churches can be used to host educational events, speakers, panels like these. And some churches in recent days have been putting up more signs about how they are welcoming to immigrants and how they will not let ICE or police into their buildings. Now I know there's a lot of emphasis on trying to get clergy involved, and there are challenges with them, we busy people, whatever. But I want to emphasize here the importance of getting congregations involved, because lay people are important. They're the ones who actually keep churches moving. Often the lay people are the ones that stay at the church longer than a clergy person stays at the church. They are more invested in their communities, and oftentimes they have more say in an institution than a clergy person does. There are ways that congregations can get involved, like joining mobilizations, providing witness at ICE check-ins, accompaniment of individuals to their hearings. They can provide housing so folks can make their appointments if they're early in the morning and they have nowhere close to stay. They can be in the parsonage, they can be housed in the parsonage or any other church property. If a member has access, a church member has access to other housing, they can provide that as well. Churches can also sponsor individuals through trusted organizations. So sometimes folks will need material needs like school supplies, monetary support for transportation, for filling out applications, school applications, whatever applications that folks have to navigate, being new to this country, navigating the system. They can also go to planning meetings and be a point person for a church or a community when the clergy person is too busy. Lay people, each church has its own legacy. And one of the things that we can do as lay people and as clergy is to connect that church's legacy with what's happening on the ground now. Connect the story and the history of that church in order to get them active now. Clergy folks, we probably, I don't know, I'm assuming you all know clergy people, but clergy people, we can speak out publicly. We can speak at mobilizations, prayers, have vigils. We can also advocate to the institutions to which we're connected, right? Every clergy person is connected to a larger body, and they can use that in order to influence and to advocate in those spaces as well. They can also join groups doing legislative visits with elected officials. They can also provide pastoral care at detention centers for the migrants who are detained, for their families, for their friends of those who are detained, and even for those of us who are advocating for them. Feel free to go to a clergy person and tell them what's up. And clergy folks can have an ongoing pastoral relationship with them, so that when stuff goes down, the clergy folks are already at the table. Church also provides cultural work. We have a plethora of rituals, symbols, meanings that we can bring to our events. We have readings from sacred texts that support these calls to rise up with migrants. We have rituals, texts that are empowering or comforting. We have resources that can span all of life. That is what we're here for. That's why we do this work of church. And especially church folks can do what the system won't. We can be present with migrants. We can listen. We can ask what the needs are. If we can provide music, song, accompaniment, we can use it as an opportunity to connect. We should be joining with others and be in conversation about what's supportive, what their lives are like. We can allow room for creativity. And another thing that we can do that the system won't is we can remember that migrants are agents of change too. Churches witnessing with migrants, as connected to IMA, we ensure that the voices of migrants are at the forefront when the UN gathers. CWWM started when the Global Forum for Migration and Development gathered in the Philippines in 2010. And we also gathered at the International Migrants Review Forum in 2022, and also in between them. They kind of follow around the UN in a fun way. Making sure that the migrants' voices are at the center, and it's not only a conversation about economics and development, but that this actually impacts people, migrants, families. So I'm gonna leave you with one more scripture reading from Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 19. Cursed is anyone who withholds justice from the foreigner, from the orphan, from the widow. Then all the people shall say amen. Then all the people shall say amen.
Thank you, Pastor Jeanelle, for taking us to church. All right, so we'll go to our next speaker. So our next speaker is David Canham. David is the Executive Director of SEIU 1012, which is right here. 1021, sorry. 1021, sorry. Oh my God, sorry. 1021. Has been with the Service Employees International Union for over a decade, including previously serving as the Field Director in San Francisco and Deputy Director of Internal Organizing and Advocacy. Prior to joining SIU, David lived in the Philippines and is also the father of Amado Canham. He passed away in 2020 while organizing amongst the indigenous communities in Mindoro facing the fact of martial law under Rodrigo Duterte. All right, we'll pass it to David. Thank you.
Is it on?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
All right. All right, how's everybody doing? I must say that I'm truly honored to be invited here to this gathering. I think it's an opportune time to be gathering, to be meeting and talking about solidarity and fascism. I myself became connected to the Philippine struggle around about 1996 when I was part of a labor delegation from South Africa that was invited to the Philippines to be part of a world conference that the movement in the Philippines had hosted. Yeah, and by the way, I am Amado's dad, and I feel he's still here today. Yes, he would be here. I feel like I'm substituting for him, actually. Yeah. It's okay to clap, yes. He was a brave young warrior. Amongst many things, I think we should all follow his footsteps. We need millions of Amados. Yeah, exactly. So I want to acknowledge being invited. I want to thank you for inviting me here. Like I said, the I want to just tell you a little bit of it because fascism has been defeated around the world. Yeah, it has. Fascism doesn't always win. I will tell you that, I need to tell you this because when I was growing up in the 80s, I was a teenager and then went to college in the late 80s. And from the age of about 14, in high school, we were already organized against apartheid education. And there was a national movement, yes. We were part, even at that early age, starting at about 14, I was part of the student movement in South Africa against apartheid education. And we were fighting a colonial, racist, fascist country with one of the most powerful armies in the world. And they used it against us. In the 80s, I want to tell you a little bit about how we won. The movement in South Africa was organized around every sector: youth, students, workers, and youth that were also unemployed. And the movement was at its peak. I was fortunate enough that the movement was at its peak in the 80s. And we would engage in national actions, not just in our neighborhoods, in our town, in our city. We had organized to have a centralized movement that we were able to engage in national days of action. Yeah, I tell you this because we can do that. Yeah, I think we have to aspire to be able to do that. The movement was organized, students had national organizations, youth had national organizations, workers had a national federation that was formed in the middle of the worst repression ever. That they had banned all political activity, gatherings like these were illegal, marches were illegal, carrying the colors of our movement was illegal. The Communism Act, the Anti-Communism Act was enforced that labeled everybody a communist, and some of them, yeah, and they were communists amongst us. And they were part of the movement. But we dared to defy the government. Yes, we dared to defy and say that fascism, that system was going to die. That it was over our dead bodies that we were going to cooperate with that system. And I tell you that because we were. Imagine millions of people on days of action marching in the streets under one united force under a 10-point program we call the Freedom Charter that began with one simple phrase that the people shall govern, not the fascists. But something happened in the mid-80s that in the middle of the worst repression, in the middle of the government jailing, killing, banning, shooting at us, something happened, a gathering like this that brought together representatives of millions of workers was launched in the middle of the worst repression, and the National Federation of the Trade Union Movement was launched. And something happened that changed everything. And I'm saying this because I think these are lessons we can learn. And for once ever, we were able to move just beyond protest and hurt the fascists and the capitalists who were hurt the most. We were able to engage in national days of national general strikes for days on end. National general strikes that demanded not wages. We were not demanding wages. We were demanding an end to apartheid. That was the main prerogative of that movement was to end that system. And I'm saying this because that's what our organization should be doing today. Yeah, that's what our organization should be doing today. If you fight just for wages as labor, you're part of the problem. Yes. If you're only focusing on wages while people are being kidnapped on the streets, if you're only focusing on wages while people are being locked up and sent to countries that are not theirs, if you're only focused on your sector and your own community alone, you are part of the problem, folks. It is. It is time for us to build a movement that transcends our sectors, a movement that will go beyond protest and render fascism in this country unworkable. Let us build a movement that will not allow them to govern us if we say no. I think that we can do. And I think you can help us. And I think you can lead that movement. I think that you can help us bring this fascism is on folks, it's here. I have seen fascism and this is it. We have lived and fought fascism and this is it. Whether the militarization that is happening, all the actions they're taking, and all the laws that they are blatantly violating, if we don't fight, folks, that could have been the last election that we just had. We cannot allow that to happen. Now, I'm going to touch on something else that I think we have to do. I think that we won our struggle because it was built on 4 pillars. It was the international isolation of that system. It was building a mass political movement above ground. It was an underground political movement and a armed action and armed struggle. The arm that was one of the most successful, 2 arms that were the most successful in our movement was the international isolation of the apartheid government of South Africa and building a mass movement in the country. Yeah, those 2 arms alone, I would say, contributed to bringing that system to its knees. I say this because the Philippine struggle deserves a movement similar to the one we had internationally that shines a spotlight on what is happening in that country. I think that it is our responsibility that we shine a light on the killings that are happening and activists disappearing in our name with weapons that are sold and made right here. I think we have a responsibility to show up and speak out and build the profile of that struggle without fear. Because that struggle has outlived many fascists in the Philippines and will outlive the current ones that are in power today. Amado said, I'm going there, Dad, because we can break the chain of imprisoned ways at its weakest. That we actually can win there. And he believed it. And I would like you to believe that too. That struggle will win, it must win, and it has to win. I think that we have a responsibility where millions of people in this country know and are paying attention to what is happening in the Philippines. Because what is happening there has nothing to do with democracy. The people that are fighting for democracy are the ones that are locked out of that democracy. They are the peasants, the workers, the indigenous people, the movement that is banned and restricted and repressed. That is the democratic movement, not those in power. And that's what we have to support. That's the solidarity we have to build. And I want to say that right here in this country, this gathering, let it be part of us building solidarity here amongst each other also to end what is happening right here in this country has to end. So a lot of us are fighting on 2 fronts, to end fascism here and to end what is happening over there. So I want to end by saying what you said, Reverend. Our struggle, if we had ignored the clergy, if we had ignored the role of the church, if we had ignored the role of faith leaders, we would have never won. You will never win, folks. If you ignore the power, what we used to say, the power of God, the moral leaders in our society, the people that our parents and our communities look to for strength and sustenance and guidance, it's them. They are part of that movement, and they have to be part of this movement. They must come in, they must be welcomed into this movement, and they have to help lead this movement. Because that's what they did in our struggle. They preached liberation. Yes, they preached liberation. because that is the closest thing to true religion, is the freedom of our people. So I've seen that power. Some of you have heard about some of our, in our struggle, some of the leaders, clergy, the Reverend, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Reverend Alan Busak. They used to stand in gatherings of tens of thousands of us and make a political speech and repeating the demands of the movement. And they would say, tell them I sent you, because they don't want to arrest us. They're too afraid to fail. They were too afraid to touch them, because they knew that if they went that far, that they would organize not just us and the workers and the sectors that we represent, but everybody else in society would be outraged. So the power of the clergy and the faith and labor and youth and student and all of these communities and sectors are really important for us to build this movement. And in fact, we don't have a choice here. We have to invite everybody in. We have to defeat this fascism, and I think that we will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David.